Acts 22 1-30, through the Bible. Chapter 22. Theme: Paul's defense before the mob at Jerusalem. This chapter gives Paul's message before the mob. He recounts his encounter with Christ and his subsequent experience, which brought him to Jerusalem. Then Paul appeals to his Roman citizenship, to deliver himself from the awful whipping of a prisoner. Let us listen to Paul. Here is a great message of the Apostle Paul. Paul's defense before the mob. Men, brethren, and fathers, hear ye my defense, which I make now unto you. Acts 22:1. Men? Yes. Brethren? Yes, they belong to the same race. Yet these brethren want to kill him. Is he being sarcastic? No, because then he shows respect for the elder men and fathers. And when they heard that he spake in the Hebrew tongue to them, they kept the more silence, and he saith, Acts 22:2. The minute he begins to speak in Hebrew, they become quiet. It is like a raging wind suddenly dying down, like calming the waves of the seas. They are listening to a man who is one of them. He begins with his personal history. I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and was zealous toward God, as ye all are this day. Acts 22:3. Paul is being persecuted by the Jewish leaders, by the religious leaders of that day. Paul shows them that he had been one of them. He had been a Pharisee. One of the reasons he has so much sympathy for them, and is so loving toward them, is that he knows exactly how they feel. He is giving them his background, because he wants to win them for Christ. Paul had a tremendous background. Tarsus was actually the center of Greek learning of that day. The finest Greek university in Paul's day was in Tarsus, not in Athens or Corinth, which had passed their zeniths. Tarsus was a thriving Greek city and an educational center. Undoubtedly, Paul had been brought up in that university in Tarsus, and had a Greek background, but he had also been in Jerusalem, where he had studied under Gamaliel. They are listening to him now. And I persecuted this way unto the death, binding and delivering into prisons, both men and women. Acts 22:4. Notice that Paul calls it this way, again. He doesn't mention the church, or the followers of Christ, or Christians. He uses the term which they understand, and which he understands. I think this way is still a good term to use. What is this way? Well, it is the way, the truth, and the life. It is the person of the Lord Jesus. He is saying to them, listen, I have the same background you folk have. I persecuted this way. I know how you feel. I did the same thing. As also, the high priest doth bear me witness, and all the estate of the elders, from whom also I received letters unto the brethren, and went to Damascus, to bring them which were there bound unto Jerusalem, for to be punished. And it came to pass that, as I made my journey, and was come nigh unto Damascus about noon, suddenly there shone from heaven a great light round about me. And I fell unto the ground, and heard a voice saying unto me, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Acts 22:5-7. Paul is telling them his experience. And I answered, Who art thou, Lord? And he said unto me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom thou persecutest. Acts 22:8. I think you could have heard a pin drop in that crowd now. And they that were with me saw indeed the light, and were afraid, but they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. Acts 22:9. I want to stop to notice something here. If you will recall, where we read about the conversion of Saul of Tarsus, it says, And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. Acts 9:7. Here Paul says, But they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. This looks like it might be a contradiction, and it is something which the critic likes to pounce on. Actually, there is no contradiction at all. The men heard a voice, they heard the sound, but they did not understand what the voice said, nor did they know whose voice it was. They simply heard a voice. And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said unto me, Arise, and go into Damascus, and there it shall be told thee, of all things which are appointed for thee to do. And when I could not see, for the glory of that light, being led by the hand of them that were with me, I came into Damascus. And one Ananias, a devout man according to the law, having a good report of all the Jews, which dwelt there, came unto me, and stood, and said unto me, Brother Saul, receive thy sight. And the same hour, I looked up upon him. And he said, The God of our fathers hath chosen thee, that thou shouldest know his will, and see, that just one, and shouldest hear the voice of his mouth. For thou shalt be his witness, unto all men, of what thou hast seen and heard. Acts 22:10-15. Notice, that Paul had been given a private interview, with the Lord Jesus. I believe that the Lord talked with him, and taught him, when he spent time out on that Arabian desert. And now why tarriest thou? Arise, and be baptized, and wash away thy sins, calling on the name of the Lord. And it came to pass, that, when I was come again to Jerusalem, even while I prayed in the temple, I was in a trance, and saw him saying unto me, Make haste, and get thee quickly out of Jerusalem, for they will not receive thy testimony concerning me. And I said, Lord, they know that I am imprisoned, and beat in every synagogue, them that believed on thee, and when the blood of thy martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by, and consenting unto his death, and kept the raiment of them that slew him. Acts 22:16-20. Paul never forgot that he had been present at the stoning of Stephen, and actually had charge over it. It left an indelible impression on his mind, and prepared him for his own conversion. And he said unto me, Depart, for I will send thee far hence unto the Gentiles. And they gave him audience unto this word, and then lifted up their voices, and said, Away with such a fellow from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. Acts 22:21-22. Paul mentions the Gentiles, because he has been out in the Gentile world, speaking to them about Jesus Christ. The Jews know that. The minute he mentions the Gentiles, it is just like lighting a fuse. They will hear him no longer. And as they cried out, and cast off their clothes, and threw dust into the air, the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle, and bade that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. Acts 22:23-24. You see, when Paul lapsed over into the Hebrew tongue, and spoke to the mob in Hebrew, the captain stood there, not able to comprehend what he was saying. The captain simply could not grasp what was happening, nor could he understand the problem. All he could do, when the mob broke into this rage, was to take Paul inside the castle. He thought that since Paul was a prisoner, he would find out the truth about the whole matter by whipping him. Paul appeals to his Roman citizenship. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman, and uncondemned? Acts 22:25. Paul is being misunderstood, all the way around. The Jews thought he had brought Trophimus into the temple, and he hadn't done that. The captain thought he was an Egyptian, who was a riot leader, and he wasn't that man. Notice who he is. He is a Hebrew, who can speak fluent Greek. Also, he is a Roman citizen. He now appeals to that citizenship, to escape the scourging of a prisoner. When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, Take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came, and said unto him, Tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, Yea. And the chief captain answered, With a great sum, obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, But I was free born. Acts 22:26-28. This captain, you see, was an ex-slave. He had saved his money, or somehow he got the money to buy his freedom. He has advanced in the Roman army, so that now he is a captain. He is amazed that he has a prisoner, who is a Roman citizen, who was born free. Then straightway, they departed from him, which should have examined him, and the chief captain also was afraid, after he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him. On the morrow, because he would have known the certainty, wherefore he was accused of the Jews, he loosed him from his bands, and commanded the chief priests, and all their council to appear, and brought Paul down, and set him before them. Acts 22:29-30. The captain finds that he has a remarkable man on his hands. He is a learned man, who speaks Greek. He is not a common crook by any means. He is a Jew, but he is also a Roman citizen. The captain says, I am not going to treat Paul like a common criminal. We will have a hearing, to find out what the charges are against him. So the captain arranged a hearing, before the chief priests and all their council. Notice, that Paul had many assets, which made him suitable, to be the missionary to the Roman Empire. He had a world view. Greek training, had prepared him as the cosmic Christian. He was trained in the Mosaic system, which prepared him to interpret it, in the light of the coming of Christ, and his redemptive death and resurrection. Not the least of his assets was his Roman citizenship, which finally opened the door for him to visit Rome.